Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Come On, Come On. In this film, we do center on the character of Johnny. He is this documentary filmmaker of sorts, and one day while he is, going upon his latest project, he is called by his sister Viv, who basically tells him that she needs him to look after his nephew Jesse because of the fact that her husband and Jesse's father, obviously, is struggling through bipolar disorder, and he's in the midst of a manic episode. So Johnny does take it upon himself to look after Jesse, and through doing so, they go on this road trip of sorts, which really gets them to understand each other for the better and sort of help them both cope with their own individual plights. So Come On, Come On, I was very excited for this film. I didn't really know a ton going into it, aside from the fact that Joaquin Phoenix was, in it, and that alone is enough of a reason to get me really excited, but I had heard many people say that this is one of the most emotional films of the entire year. I feel like as reviews have gone on, like coming out of TIFF, the reviews were strong, but I feel like they've only gotten stronger as they went along, so when I heard this film was finally expanding, I was very excited to see it. I did finally see it, and my God, did this film blow me away. Come On, Come On is a very special film that I think is going to touch people in a lot of different areas, but it's also a very human and profound experience that I think is going to have an impact on many people, but we are just getting into it right now, starting off with the cast. And that alone is definitely one of the best parts of this entire movie. I think everyone acting-wise really does an incredible job here. But of course, we need to talk about just one of the best actors working today in Joaquin Phoenix, who gives a very different performance than I think many people are expecting. This is not a very, showy type performance where he gets really angry and he's, raising his voice a lot. That's not really what this is. This is a much more subtle and authentic performance, but it's one of his best, I think, for sure, and one that is getting sorely overlooked by pretty much anyone in charge of creating award shows, because he absolutely should be at least a contender to be nominated, because he is just absolutely incredible here. Johnny as a character is someone who has gone through a lot of emotional baggage in his life, but he doesn't really know how to fully express it. He often doesn't really like to talk about it. He's very closed off in that way, and Phoenix does a really great job of portraying that character. Every single emotion that Johnny's gone through, you understand how he really is feeling, but you also understand the care that he really does have for Jesse, and I really did love what he ended up doing in this film. He has one scene especially which I think is absolutely phenomenal and some of the best work of his entire career. I really wish more people were talking about this performance, because I think he just does such an incredible job. Like I said, it's a very subdued performance than I think people are expecting from Phoenix, but it's more in line of, say, kind of like what he did in the movie Her, and if you're a big fan of that performance, I think you'll really enjoy his work in this movie, because he was absolutely phenomenal here. But I gotta say, as good as Phoenix was, Woody Norman might just be the standout of this entire movie, because the kind of performance that he gives is truly phenomenal here. I mean, this is one of the most impressive child performances I have seen in a very long time. The range that he has in him, especially at such a young age, and the places he's willing to go, it's just incredible to me. And I understand that Jesse himself is supposed to be like this child prodigy of sorts, but Norman himself, I think, is very much also one, because I mean, he is such a three-dimensional actor already at such a young age, but he really channels the hurt that Jesse has gone through, but also the ways that he contrasts that with the way Johnny goes about it. I really enjoy what he ended up doing in this movie. Jesse starts off, and at first he's kind of irritable, and he's giving a very typical performance, but as it goes on, he starts to show a range of intelligence. He starts to show a range of emotion that goes far beyond his years, and I just absolutely loved everything that Norman did in this movie. Really does hold his own against Phoenix, and at points I think might just run away with the entire movie. The chemistry between these two is just absolutely irresistible. You really do latch onto these two no matter what they're doing, whether they're just talking casually or if they're going into more in-depth conversation. I think both of them just work so well together. I really like the dynamic between these two, and it's easily some of the best chemistry I've seen between any actors all year. And like I said, I think especially when you're in a movie with someone like Joaquin Phoenix, and the fact you can be even as good, let alone better than him, I think really shows the range in Woody Norman. It is a great injustice that he is not being considered for Best Supporting Actor, because if I was in charge, he might just be the front runner, because that's really how good he was in this movie. Absolutely phenomenal performance all around. As far as the rest of the cast goes, everyone else does a really great job. Gaby Hoffmann, I feel, is getting very overlooked when it comes to this movie. Not just the movie in general is getting overlooked, but Gaby Hoffmann's performance, I don't think enough people are really talking about. And I can kind of understand that because she's not in the movie, say, as much as Phoenix or Norman, but her performance is still should not be understated here. She gives a really strong performance. You understand that she is this woman that is really going through a difficulty in her life, and she's doing what she can to care for her family, but also caring a lot for Jesse, and she has a bunch of other struggles that she's gone through. Has just as much hurt as our two characters at the center, and I really liked what she ended up doing here. It's a very wordless performance. She doesn't have a ton of dialogue, but I was just really blown away by what she did here. Scoot McNairy is also very good in this movie. Everyone really does a great job in terms of the acting here. Now we have to get to the directing and the writing when it comes to this film, because that I think really is what makes this such an effective watch overall. Mike Mills as a director is someone that I have seen before. I think he's a director that is someone that has shown to be a really strong one. I haven't really seen any of his other movies like 20th Century Women or Beginners, but I've heard both of those are really strong works. But I think with this film, he really just shows how great of a director he is when it comes to emotions. The way that he decides to portray this film, I think is really well done. It's very carefully done, and I think he does a really strong job with that, but it also... there's something quite beautiful about it, and you can tell that this is a story that really did impact Mills in a pretty significant way. What I really love about this movie is that it never gets too overly sentimental. It gets sentimental enough, but never too overly sentimental. It feels very lifelike in that way, and I think he just does such a great job here. Every conversation feels so authentic. Every line of dialogue, it just feels real, and I think he did a really great job when it came to the directing in this film. There's so much that he's trying to say when it comes to the way that we process emotions, but also the way that we're taught things. I think he does a really great job with, and I think his directing is just really strong here overall. The emotions especially, I mean, it's such a gut punch at points. I really did find myself getting emotional in many aspects in this film, and that really is due to the way Mills decided to go about directing, but his screenplay as well is among some of the best of the entire year. I mean, the story at the center already is very effective. You have two characters here, one of them being Johnny, who, like I said, he's gone through a lot in his life. He was in a marriage, and that hasn't really worked out. His mother has recently died, and he hasn't really known how to feel about that. And besides being a documentary filmmaker, doesn't really have a ton of direction within his life. But virtually every time, that's brought up to him, he kind of just ignores it. He wants to move on to something else. He doesn't really want to deal with the weight of what he's going through. And I think that's something that a lot of people are going to latch onto. A lot of people are going to relate to Johnny in this movie. Someone that doesn't just want to face the music. He wants to just kind of move on from it, not speak of it. It's happened. I'm not affected by it. But you can clearly see that he is. You can clearly see this very much does still have an impact on him. And I thought overall, Phoenix did such not only did Phoenix performance shine through, I thought the writing for Johnny really shined through as well, because you can see he wants to be that parental figure in Jesse's life that is kind of showing him how to move on from all this, but he's really not. And in contrast to Jesse, what I really love about this character is that often when you have stories about a child and their uncle going on a road trip, most of the time it's the adult teaching the child things, instilling these values into that child and getting them to, deal with whatever is troubling them within the world. But this film, it's kind of reverse. It often feels like Jesse is teaching Johnny about life. Johnny's kind of at a point where he doesn't really know how to handle certain things, and Jesse does. Jesse's getting him to to face that, and I really liked that idea a lot. I really liked what they end up doing that, and Jesse himself is also very troubled. Like I said, in the beginning of this movie, he is kind of just annoying. He's very irritable. He is someone that, is kind of a nuisance to Johnny, and you don't really understand, like, what is really going on with him, but as the film goes on, you really start to peel back the layers of this character and realize the hurt that he's going through, the changes that are about to take place within his life, and it's the difference. It's the way that Jesse processes emotion versus the way that Johnny processes emotion that really makes this film so compelling, and I really liked how they ended up doing that here. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in this movie when it comes to that, and the way both of these characters are really kind of like struggling to convey their emotions, but really do, by the end of this movie, help changing each other for the better. It just feels so beautiful, and I think that's something that works very well within this movie. So those two characters alone are enough of a reason to latch onto this film, but what really impressed me about this film and really made Come On, I think one of the most effective films the entire year, is that there's a whole other section of this movie where we actually do get to see some of the documentary that Johnny is making, where he's interviewing all of these kids and he's asking them some very profound questions about the world, about the future, about life, about death, and it's this section of the movie that really did get to me. It's not like the Johnny and Jesse stuff is bad, because it's really, really strong on its own, but it is a story we have seen played out before. What I think really makes this movie so effective and is really going to stick with you is actually this portion of the movie. A lot of it is actually dedicated to just Joaquin Phoenix asking questions about the world, and I think it's one of the best decisions that Mike Mills really could have done, because the main story already is like told very well. Obviously, it's a really impactful story about grief, about sort of like repressed anger in that way, repressed sadness. I think he does a good job with that. It's already told very effectively. But this part of the movie, it brings this authenticity and meaning to this film that really makes it so poignant in that way, especially when you take into the fact that all of these kids that Johnny is interviewing, these are not actors. From what I understand, these kids were not told what they were being interviewed for. They were just told that they're going to be asked some questions. They didn't know the Joaquin Phoenix was involved or anything like that. And I think that's really cool. I think it's really great. And it just shows like how authentic Mills wanted this to be. He wanted this to be the most lifelike reactions possible, because it is. These are real kids. And I really love seeing that. It kind of ties that theme together very nicely. Like I said, similar to how Jesse is far beyond his years in terms of intelligence and the way he looks at the world, same when it comes to these kids, the way that they view things, I just found to be really interesting, and it was probably the part of the movie that I looked forward to the most. Like, again, I really love the story between Johnny and Jesse, but I always got excited whenever we cut back to these interviews, because it really just brought a whole new meaning to the film, which is, again, about the humanity of it all, the way future generations view the world, and are doing what they can to process emotion and things like that, and sort of the contrast with how previous generations have. I think this movie just does such an incredible job with that, and I just really love that part of the movie a lot. I think that was probably, honestly, my favorite portion of the film, is whenever we would cut back to those kids again, because suddenly the movie felt so much more real and raw in that way, that it was willing to go to these places and willing to ask these kids some very hard questions. I thought was just really well handled in that way. But again, I want to reiterate, the screenplay alone is still very strong here. Gaby Hoffmann's character as well is someone that I really latched onto, because she's dealing in a similar way to what Johnny is, but she's gone about things in a very different light. Both of them are dealing with the fact that their mother has passed away, but she had a very different experience with her mother than he did. While Johnny's experience with his mom was pretty positive, with Gaby Hoffmann's character, Viv, her mom basically resented her her and wanted nothing to do with her. And I thought that was also a very interesting sort of struggle to see what she's going through and the way that she is trying to move forward. Not sure if, her current situation with her husband is going to work out. I thought they did a really good job with that. And what I especially like about her scenes is that the majority of them are without dialogue. A lot of it is presented through montages or these extended scenes of seeing Viv, take care of her husband, but unsure if he's really going to be able to recover from this, sort of like meltdown he's having, not sure if he's going to be in a better place. And the way the film portrays bipolar disorder, I think, is really strong. So I really enjoyed that section of the movie as well. And I feel like it's a part of the film that just isn't being talked about enough because it's still very important. It still really ties into the message of this movie, which is really about just, I think, the grayness within the world. It's about how, things aren't good or bad. There is that grayness, and we need to focus on that grayness and try to move past it. Things are going to go wrong in our life, but things can't also always be good in our life, and we need to just kind of like move forward and appreciate those moments in between. And I think that's something that this film just does such an amazing job with. When it comes to Johnny and Jesse, the fact that Jesse is so young, but yet there's so much that he's learning, even at such a young age. If he doesn't remember it, you can see that he still is impacted by it. Same with Johnny, he gets a big impact from this. And I thought that's something that they just did such an amazing job here. It really is kind of beyond comprehension, just how effective this film is in terms of the story. And I think they did an amazing job with that. But let's get to cinematography in this movie, because when it comes to black and white movies, you guys know I always have one question in my mind, is that does this movie do something to justify that cinematography? The black and white, I think it's a very specific choice, but it's becoming a bit of a mainstay, I feel like, in awards films. We've had like 4 awards films that have come out that have utilized black and white cinematography, and this film, I honestly think, uses it to the most to its advantage. Because what I think Come On does really well is the black and white cinematography. A lot of the time we are looking at just how beautiful, where Jesse and Johnny are. We're seeing how beautiful the world is and things like that. There are these amazing just shots of them just going through New York City and just having the best time and seeing all these amazing sights. But at the same time, that these characters are not really in the best of spots in terms of emotion. And I think the cinematography really helps convey that very well. The grayness of the world, like I said, I think is just very well captured here. And there are so many just stunning shots in this movie that I just absolutely adored. Some of the best cinematography of the entire year. The score as well is one that I really found myself liking a lot. It's very melancholy. It's very similar to a lot of things in this movie. Very subtle, but very effective in that way. As it went on, I think the score just really helped elevate the message of this movie very well. I really enjoyed the score here and the editing. I think this film was extremely well paced. I've heard some people say that it's a bit too short and that we don't get to see enough with some moments, and I would very much disagree. I think overall the editing was very well done here. The movie really flew by for me, and I felt like every scene was really used to its advantage. I feel like, especially when, again, that documentary aspect, they always knew when to cut back. It never felt like one was like overshadowing the other. Like there isn't too much of the Johnny and Jesse stuff and not enough of the documentary part of the film. I think there's just as much as both, and they really do go hand in hand. And the film is very well edited in that way, especially when it comes to the questions that are asked. They're asked at just the right time. They really help, I think, posit the theme that the movie's trying to go for, and I thought that it just supported everything so nicely. I really liked the way that it was handled, and the ending, it's one of the most effective of the entire year. There's a line, especially at the end, that really has stuck with me, and I think if you've ever gone through a situation in life where you're interacting with someone that's younger and you've gone through some sort of trip with them and you both have had like some really deep conversations, I think that's really going to stick with you, and really seeing the changes that are made throughout both of their lives and how they're affected through this. I think it's just really well handled in that way. Guys, Come On really did affect me in a pretty big way. This is such a beautiful film. It's very philosophical. It's very passionate in that way, and I think it just does such a great job at showcasing two characters that are very broken but really do find a way to become whole again in their own ways. Joaquin Phoenix is amazing in this film, giving one of the best performances of the year, but Woody Norman might just run away with the entire movie for me, giving one of the best child performances that I have seen in recent memory, both of which should definitely be up for Oscar consideration. It's really a shame that they have not even gotten close to that at all. Some beautiful black and white cinematography, very interesting artistic choices from Mike Mills that really helps bring the theme to light in a very big way, especially with the documentary portions of this movie and whatnot. I thought they do an amazing job with that. It's a very touching journey. It's one that I think is going to get to a lot of people, but it's even funny at points. There are a lot of fun moments in this movie, and I think overall this film does such an amazing job of really showcasing how people process emotion. It's a very human movie in that way. And I think while there are points of this movie that we definitely have seen before, I think this movie handles it in the best possible way that it could. It's a very authentic film. It's very emotional. It's definitely going to get to a lot of people, but I think it's also going to get you to think in ways that maybe you really didn't before, especially when it comes to children and the way that they see the world. I think this movie does a really incredible job with that. And I gotta be honest, at the end of the day, I really don't have too many complaints with this movie at all. I think every single storyline was done to its full potential. I think everything was showcased in the way that it needed to be. When it came to Johnny, when it came to Jesse, you felt for these characters. Even Viv as a character was someone that you really do feel for. The documentary aspect of the film, really just helps tie everything together quite nicely. This is just easily one of the best movies of the entire year. It's a crying shame that a lot of people are just really overlooking it. I really wish that wasn't the case, because I really do think this is one of the most special and effective films that you will see all year. Come On is easily one of the best movies of the entire year, and I'm definitely going to give it an A+. Guys, I really can't recommend this one enough. Again, it really is a shame that I feel like this movie has just kind of come out and nobody's really talked about it, but I really do encourage all of you guys to check out this movie, whether it's in theaters still for you or comes on to VOD. It's a must-see for sure. Definitely one of the best of the year. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video. I have a lot of reviews coming up that I did with my girlfriend since I'm visiting her right now. We've done quite a few videos together, so the majority of the ones you're going to see are probably going to be with her. Very excited for you guys to check those out. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.